Hi, everybody. My name is Carol Turner, and today I'm going to be talking about the response deprivation hypothesis. And I hope you're ready to go along for the ride. So, first, let's talk about what relative deprivation theory actually is. So, what this tells us is that we have behaviors that come out naturally either when we get denied from something or we are unable to do something as much as what we would like. An example of this would be when your mom tells you you cannot go out with friends. Well, your room is dirty. Even though that you hate cleaning your room, you still do it so you can go out and do something that you enjoy. So, what would happen here is that because you want to go out and you want to go do things with your friends, you tell your mother that you obviously are going to go clean up and do all that good stuff in order for you to be receiving good stuff for good rewards for the behavior of you doing what you were asked to do. The first study I found was talking about relative deprivation and inequalities in social and political activism. Now, while I didn't think both of these went together, it somehow made sense after I kind of started reading. So, there's probably a few things that you need to get started with. So, the first thing that we're going to do is search for previous studies on the actual relative deprivation and political participation in order to come up with the hypothesis. Then we're going to develop a test model and test this and see how impactful it can be in different ways and how it can be different in situations, locations, and how economics can actually affect people. So let's talk about politics. So what exactly is it? Why do we vote? So the reason that majority of us Americans vote is because we like to feel as if we have a voice. So that's why we participate in our county electoral board elections. We vote for, president. We go and even vote for who's going to be the next governor of Oklahoma. But the reason that we do this is that we feel as if we get some people into office that who hear our voice and hear our concerns, that something is going to come of it. So, how this actually ties into the relative deprivation is everyday people, obviously, like I just said, want to have a voice. And if they are not necessarily a person in power, as most of us aren't, we want the ones who are to be able to do something about it. And to come from that place of, not everybody wants to be a politician necessarily. So there's not necessarily that kind of, anguish, I guess. However, because there are people like that already in power and who can have influence over certain things, this is why it is so important to point out the inequalities within everything, because even when we elect people into office, they don't do as if they'd say that they would do. The next study I want to talk about regarding relative deprivation is the study about individual well-being. So this study discusses how people who are not doing so well financially makes them show signs of actual relative deprivation. So the effects of this has overall lowered the average person's happiness to a point that even after making more money, they still remain stagnant. Overall, there were findings that were actually rather surprising that said that there were many people who were, well above the higher portion on the tax bracket and all that kind of good stuff, who said that their happiness actually didn't come from within. They didn't have any real source of happiness. The only source they had was being a workaholic or being on the go all the time and not necessarily enjoying their own self. And at that point, not having a high sense of well-being. So, in conclusion, I want to talk about a few key findings. So one of the pros was that there was a lot of strong evidence showing that there was actually a pretty big impact on the negative side of people's well-being and how this actually affects them and all that goods. And a second one was by providing counseling services, we could actually have the ability to nip the bud in what relative deprivation does to people and how it makes people so fearful of themselves and don't love themselves enough. And that's what I personally feel a lot comes from and stems from the personal deprivation itself. Just wanted to say a quick thank you to everybody who watches my video and obviously says something back. I hope you guys have a great rest of your semester. And here comes summer.